Think I Love You. Presented by Still a Frog.
She never ate lunch this late. She enjoyed the midday socializing with the people in the office, so she made it a point to go with them. Today, however, she'd still been in a meeting at noon, and by the time it ended, everyone else had gone out and come back. So she'd walked across the street to the closest of the places where they usually went. Her first inkling that something was amiss was when the hostess said, "Just one?" And for just a split second, she felt a powerful urge to say, "Yeah, just one. You got a problem with that bitch?" But the girl clearly hadn't meant anything by it, so she just chalked it up to being frustrated with how long the meeting had lasted. Until the waitress walked over and said, "Are you waiting for someone?" And she felt it again. The impulse to say something like, "Look, chickie, I was married for 18 years to a smart, good-looking, successful man. Okay, he didn't have a firm grasp on the concept of fidelity, but nobody's perfect. And I've had 2 long-term relationships with younger guys since then, so it's not like I'm unattractive to men." What she said instead, however, was, "No, just me." But she still wasn't quite sure why she felt like she'd been asked to wear a big sign around her neck that said, "Loser." Not until after the waitress left. She looked around, and then it hit her. She was the only woman in the place who was sitting by herself. There were men sitting alone, but no women. So here it was, middle of the second decade of the 21st century, and she was feeling conspicuous just because she wasn't with a man. But the problem wasn't the people in the restaurant. She knew that. None of them cared. The problem was in her head. That same battle that had been going on in her brain for as long as she could remember. The war between the traditionalists, men and women were meant to live together as couples, and the feminists, you don't need a man to live with, and the more subtle message, you really shouldn't even want one. Well, she'd had enough. She was tired of being told what she should want. She knew what she did want, and what she wanted was a mate. She'd flown solo for long enough. So she logged on to the dating site. This time, she was going to find a suitable partner. If not Mr. Right, then at least Mr. Not Entirely Wrong, and she was going to do it no matter how long it took. So she began flipping through profiles rapidly. She must have gone through hundreds of them, maybe dozens anyway. It took all of lunch and another hour or 2 after she'd gotten home, but she found one. He wasn't sitting on a motorcycle or holding a fish, and he certainly wasn't sitting on a motorcycle and holding a fish. She'd actually seen one of those. Plus, he was decent looking. But what really got her was what he'd written. It was different from everything else she'd read, and she particularly liked the part about motorcycles. He said that he hadn't ridden one at all since his first year of college, and even back then he hadn't ridden very much because his rarely ran for very long. He just fervently hoped it made him look cool, as he leaned rakishly against it when it was broken down by the side of the road. His description was funny. She had actually laughed out loud, but what she really liked was that the guy had apparently grown out of all of that before he was 20, unlike her former husband, who had fallen into it at 40. So, with the last sip of wine, she typed 5 words. "I think I love you," added a smiley icon, clicked send, and waited for what she fully expected would be a cascade of second thoughts. But none came. What did come, however, within minutes, was a reply. "I'm probably not the only guy you've said that to, but it's still the best first message I've ever received." She wrote back quickly, "Oh, come on, you've probably received plenty of emails like that, and you've probably sent at least a few." He must have been waiting, because he responded immediately. "No, I may have thought that on 1 or 2 occasions. But since I hadn't even spoken to the woman in question, let alone met her, I felt that it was too soon to know if it was love. So I dismissed it as, premature infatuation. But even if I had truly thought that it really was love, I wouldn't have wanted to articulate the idea prematurely, because I wouldn't have wanted her to think of me as a premature articulator." "Oh, you are good," she wrote back. "So, are you ever going to ask to meet me? Or are you worried that talking in person this early might be a mistake? Premature communication?" He sent back a time, a place, and a number. 2 days later, she walked into the establishment, practically awash in an ocean of doubts. She'd heard a man's voice call her name. She turned to see him, and all the doubts vanished instantaneously. It was as if they had never existed in the first place. And the best part was that she could tell from the look on his face that his doubts had also evaporated just as fast.
Ribbit.